everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of the Shinesparkers podcast. I'm Amanda Van Heil. I'm going to be your host for today, joined by Darren, our creative director, and contributor Dalagonash. And we also have two very special guests. We have Sam Balcomb and Jeff Dodson from Rainfall Films.
How's it going?
Hello.
Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm very excited to talk with you about your Metroid movie, The Sky Calls. So first, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about Rainfall Films and some of the productions you've worked on?
Sure. Well, we're a small production and post house in Los Angeles, and we founded 12 years ago, 2008.
Yeah, it's been a minute, and we started doing music videos back.
Yeah, it was. Well, we all worked for different production companies beforehand, and we were all kind of just tired of having bosses, and we said, okay, well, let's kind of strike out on our own. And the last decade or so has been kind of a combination of working on client jobs, from anything from visual effects to filming to sound design and music and advertising, and our own kind of in-house films, short films, trailers, proof of concept stuff, anything that we just kind of feel like doing. And
it's like a big cycle. We'll get like burnout and then be like, we should probably do something that is fun and for us, and then jump on some sort of concept, and then that reinvigorates us to go back and work on more non-us stuff.
Absolutely. And it kind of opens up to other like jobs as well, because sometimes we can work on something on our own that we never would have gotten hired to do in the first place, and we put it out there and hopefully it makes an impact, and then all of a sudden people want, oh hey, you did this for on that film, can you do it for our film too? So
Metroid's a good example of that, because we did tons of motion capture, which we had never done before, which led us to finding a creative way to do the motion capture that didn't involve doing a bunch of cameras. So we would not have done that if it had not been for Metroid.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's pretty much what Rainfall is all about.
Cool. So Metroid The Sky Calls was created thanks to winning votes from Rainfall's fantasy filmmaking project poll, which is something that Shinesparkers campaigned for heavily at the time. But what made you decide to shortlist Metroid as a choice in the first place?
It wasn't entirely up to us. We started off with we did a video where we invited people to submit their ideas, because we wanted to do another short film based on something, and because we've done numerous productions in the past. We did a Wonder Woman short, we did a Legend of Zelda short, and we were really interested in doing another one, but we thought it'd be fun to open it up and have people come in and suggest and then vote. So the first phase of that was people sending in their suggestions, and we got hundreds and hundreds of suggestions from video games to books to just everything. And we narrowed it down to the ones that we thought had the most potential, the ones that we would be the most excited about doing, that would do the best job on, and ones that we just thought people would enjoy seeing. So Metroid was very high on that list.
I feel like we were like stuck in our own little bubble in terms of which ones we would pick. So when we were like, well, let's see what other franchises like other people want to see, maybe that'll throw something that we hadn't expected. And there were a number of kind of like higher choices that we were like, oh man, I never even thought of that, or that would be kind of fun to do. But
yeah, so it was really exciting to watch that process, and then just seeing once we shifted to phase 2, which was the actual voting. I think there was a top 5, and then I think we gave around a week or two for votes to come in, and it was just neck and neck there for a while. It was a really fun process to watch.
We trimmed it down to different genres too, because like I think we didn't want them all to be like high fantasy. Like I think Metroid might have been the only kind of like science fiction based one. So, yeah. I think one of the Final Fantasy periods,
Final Fantasy
one that was like more in
I
think 2 got picked too, right? Or I guess Japan 2, not whatever.
I think the US 2, the Japan 4.
4, right? Yeah. That would have been cool with mechs, but
yeah.
you know.
But, yeah, well, what's funny is looking back on that list is so many films. There were characters or properties on there that have since become films. Like I think Black Panther was on there, and I think Captain Marvel was on there as well.
Yeah.
So
which with Wonder Woman, we're no short of like releasing something that's fan made moments before the real thing is announced. Apparently,
yeah. I believe they announced that Wonder Woman was being added to Batman v Superman 2 weeks after our short came out, which is just the weirdest timing.
It's really convenient, isn't it? Wow.
And the whole outfit debacle too, man. I mean, there was a number of backlash about how their costume did have no color in it and seemed very like whatever, uninspired, and then referenced ours, which was not.
that must feel so weird to have your fan thing referenced by that many people. So Metroid wasn't on your internal shortlist at all.
Oh, it was. That was my pick.
Oh, it was. Oh, that was your pick. Ah, right. Okay. All right.
I really wanted, especially. Go ahead. I was saying I really wanted to do something science fiction related just for the kind of excitement of doing the sound design portion of it, just because, you know, with the Zelda stuff, a lot of that was just, and same with Wonder Woman, and most of it was just Foley driven sound, real recordings of things like swords hitting and things whipping by. And so, you know, Metroid actually had a bigger playground of playing around with stranger sounds. So
yeah, and it was a lot more narrative too, which is fun because we hadn't done something quite that story driven in a while.
Yeah, and you were like, I really want to make a narrative out of this, as opposed to like, you know, Wonder Woman and Zelda were both pitched as trailers, which means we just had to come up with like vignette moments. It didn't really have to be like a cohesive storyline. And then we wanted to push it with Metroid, the third one.
Yep.
So actually, I think you've touched on a couple of our next question in there, but like obviously the movie pays homage to a lot of classic sci-fi movies, and you know you get like a lot of vibes of stuff like Alien in there, which is obviously the inspiration behind the Metroid franchise in the first place. And it obviously looks and feels like a classic movie from that era in the way it was filmed and presented, and sounds the part thanks to the terrific score by Jeff. So was creating a movie in the style of a classic sci-fi movie, was that always the approach you had when you were thinking about having Metroid on that shortlist?
No, that came a little bit later. The film took a long time to make. It was a little over a year from choosing the subject to releasing it. Part of that was due to like just 2014, 2015 were just insanely busy years for us at Rainfall. So we didn't have a lot of additional time to work on it. But also, it took us a while just to find the right angle on the adaptation. Jeff and I remember we sat down at one point and we sketched out a story that was more traditional, more what you would traditionally think of as a live action Metroid. It was a bit more action packed. There was more fighting aliens and that kind of stuff. I think Ridley was in there and Mother Brain, and it was cool, but I don't. There was something about
so much. It was so much.
Yeah, I think what it was just too expected. It was. We didn't want to do something like it's a fan film. If you're going to do it, it's not an official thing. If a studio is going to go out and make this film, it's going to be a certain way, and it may be awesome. We have no idea because hopefully someday we'll know. But you know, we're making a fan film, so we can do whatever we want. And I think it's a missed opportunity if you don't kind of make it the film that you want to see. And
we had a short list of stuff we absolutely wanted in there too, though, like things that we knew that we wanted and things that we thought people wanted. Like we're like, well, she's got to morph into the ball. There has to be Chozo in it. Like there was just things we needed to check off.
Yeah. So the question was just presentation. How does the film feel? How does it all come together? And there originally was more. It was more modern and more. If you watch like the cutscenes from I don't know. Other M or something, the technology is more like touch screens and holograms and just more what you would expect from that, or even like any of the Prime games. And I think if I remember correctly, like I was working late one night and I was waiting on client notes for something, and I just decided to start rewatching 2001, and I was watching it, and I was watching just like the wonderful tech that was. Looked futuristic for the time, but now has that wonderful retro sci-fi feel to it. and the pacing and the look and the sound and everything. And it just kind of hit me like, wow, this is, to me, because I mean, I grew up on the original Metroid games. That's kind of how I associate that world and that story, more retro than futuristic. And I think I quickly hacked together a little animatic or something, and I sent it to Jeff and to Jesse, our other Rainfall partner, with some. I think I even like tempted to what is it? Also Sprach Zarathustra. I always mispronounce that from that Kubrick used in 2001.
Yeah, there's no way I'm going to pronounce it, but that one.
And I think we all agree like that was the way to go. It had this wonderful charm to it, and even adding in like the real film grain and adding the grunge factor to it to make it look like it was unearthed and remastered and was, you know, maybe on film sitting in a wet basement for 20 years.
And we were working on doing tech development for how to make whatever 16 and 35 mil grain look good for that Venom project. And you had been like recording real grain up against a wall just so we could like check and see if the grain looked the same as like any plugins to make sure it was like authentic enough.
Yeah, we had hours of digitized 16 millimeter grain. So it could at least we could use that and not like Jeff said, just rely on plugins and just your standard.
Because YouTube compression loves 16 millimeter grain.
Oh,
I can imagine.
That was awful. Trying to at the very end, trying to output it and figure out the right bit rate, and just so that all that grain and all that detail wouldn't just turn to mush.
I think your decision to like push it to be like, look, we're going to do this retro style and have this specific look, like really helped to make it ours in terms of its like identity and to mitigate any kind of, because I mean, you can't do a fan project without criticism for sure. And it was just like, well, look, like this is the type of film we're going to make. This is our goal. Like it has a clear vision. It's not just us trying to slap together a bunch of Metroid stuff. So like, hopefully you like it, but this is the world that our version is going to live in.
Yeah. We didn't want it to feel like, hey, this is our pitch for a Metroid movie. Like this is what we want to try to do. Like, no, this is how we would love to see a full-length film done in the style, maybe not quite so extreme, but that I think more just in terms of like the pacing and the framing and the aesthetic of it, you know, you can play the original Metroid game and just feel the influence of those films, whether it's Alien or even 2001. There is that isolation, that loneliness that comes with those early levels, especially. And once you get into action, once things, you know, once the lasers start flying, then you lose that. And so I think whatever we did, we wanted to hang on to that feeling of exploration and isolation as much as possible.
You could put smokestacks on that gunship. Just do like a full retro version.
A steampunk version, we could do that.
I was going to say you're airing towards steampunk now.
Yeah,
that's scary.
We were never
gunship into like a full-on like blimp or something.
the Samus Zeppelin.
I'm sure there's been a steampunk Metroid fan art or costume made. I'm going to have to Google that later.
Almost definitely, yeah.
Oh, there's no way it doesn't exist. Like that, there's got to be like a Samus with a jetpack. Sam, you were responsible for directing the movie and writing the script for Sky Calls. The plot of the movie involves Samus investigating a deep signal from within the planet and discovers that it's a message left for her by the Chobot race. So what made you decide to take an original story for Samus instead of just adapting an existing adventure, such as like the original Metroid or Super Metroid or even Other M?
Mm. Well, as Jeff mentioned, there were elements that we knew that we needed to have in there. And I don't think adapting one of the previous game stories was all that interesting to us because we didn't want to. There's already a lot of responsibility on portraying the character in the world correctly, and if we were just doing like a 5-10 minute short, then that's a really short amount of time to adapt one of those official stories. So we thought it would most benefit from something original that's tailor made for that runtime, and it would allow us to kind of play around a bit more with the lore, while hopefully not going against any of the established canon.
Cool. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the score and a little bit more with Jeff, if I may. You created a really fitting score for the movie that added to the tension and suspense and mystery of Samus's adventure, I felt, throughout the movie, with a combination of orchestra and electronic synths. What was it like to create a score for a Metroid movie, and how did that come together?
Well, thank you for starters. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because I think that there's a lot of trend for like AAA games in general, especially like those mid 2000 titles, to like really bank on this whole like cinematic experience crap and trying to make kind of disposable scores instead of really where a lot of these games came from, with these like really iconic themes and no orchestra elements. But we were trying to do a film, and we're trying to do one that was very much in a specific style that came from score. So I think you had kind of storyboarded out a first animatic of the ship like coming out over the planet, and you were like, this is kind of what I'm thinking for, like, and it was like that top down shot where the gunship was just like kind of like cruising over the planet.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to try to put together some atmospherics and see how it sounds. And you know, I'd started with it being like fully electronic and like trying to like just make it as kind of swellingly in digital as possible so that it could be pushed more into that kind of like video game synth direction. And then just started putting just dissonant tones of just like really spooky, scary stuff that was very much more like Monolith Sequence in 2001 and just like those creepy, eerie scenes, aliens, all that stuff. And it started to come together, and we just kind of dug into themes. We were like, we wanted this to have themes. Sam and I are really big criticism of modern movies where there's like not really iconic motifs and themes that go on for scenes and characters. Yeah, I think that the Marvel movies do, but I like absolutely cannot stand the Marvel themes, which is too bad because it's like one of my favorite composers. So yeah, I mean, it just started coming together.
I was going to say, well, like what you were saying about kind of layering in atmospherics and drones and all those eerie sounds. What you found that worked so well is laying those in as a bed and then throwing some very lightly some of those original Metroid themes over it worked incredibly well. Even just that little 3-note do really just works with that kind of style.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so like at the last reel that plays is like a complete shout out to Goldsmith and like very much done in that like kind of like big Star Trek kind of style. And then as it's like petering out, you know, we bring in that original, you know, 4-note theme just to kind of interlude, like, you know, I don't know, in case we were going to do another one, we wanted to have kind of like a fun bridge and a nice cliffhanger at the end of it, both from the music standpoint, you know, connecting with the film and with the actual original score, or just with the original kind of like melodies you're familiar with. And we did that with the sound design too. Like I remember we took like when she shoots her rockets, like the ball transformation, there's a lot of like the original sound that's processed in a way, and then complete new sound design that we like kind of merged with it, just because we wanted to bring, I don't know, just like shout out like, hey, look, like we were aware of this original stuff. We really care about this original stuff and want to do it justice. But at the same token, we want to like kind of push it and do something with it at the same time.
Yeah. There's almost something you added a bit more of a mechanical aspect to a lot of Samus's sounds that are not quite, I don't know, not quite involved in the original design, or even like say like from the Prime games that had more sophisticated sound design. So because we were going with that more retro style, adding in the really like the gears and like even like I love the heavy foot stomps that you feel the weight of the suit.
It was coincidental timing because I had just recorded a bunch of like our buddy had a metal shop, and we went there and just beat the ever-loving hell out of this enormous pieces of metal on each other, and just had all this like really great like clattering source to pull from. And I think I made some joke with you about like it'd be funny to have this like horrible metal sounds compressing down with like gore sounds as she like morphs into her ball, because like, you know, how does she fit in there, you know? Like
one of the biggest mysteries of the Metroid series right there.
Just a horrible scream every time.
So we had
what did you do? I was going to say, what did you do with those big water jugs?
Oh, right. That was for the sequence where the ship goes through the whatever portal or wormhole. We had two of these huge empty water jugs that I had lying around, and we have these piezoelectric mics, which are like contact microphones. And I wanted the ship to have this whole kind of fly apart on the seams kind of sensation to it. So we had put the mics together and started just rattling the jugs and banging them together, and it gives that whole submarine kind of metal creaking but not kind of thundering sound. And so that was one layer that was in there. That whole sequence had so much stuff going on just to give it such a spooky thing. And then I started putting that cadence of the these banging timpanis and almost just straightened an industrial beat to it, because it was just driving through the whole thing. And that's one of my favorite sequences for sure.
Yeah, same here.
So can you tell us a bit how you even, go through that process of scoring for a movie like The Sky Calls? I know, big question, I know, sorry.
Well, no, it's a great question. I think that there's a bunch of traditional ways of approaching it, which we definitely did. And then there were some kind of non-standard ways just because of how the production of Metroid came together, because it's very non-linear. So Sam will block off sequences that he thinks need music or would benefit from it into what are called reels. So we'll have a short sequence that, for example, when she first falls into the Chozo ruins, and it's right after this kind of loud tunnel sequence in the morph ball, and then it kind of plops into this whole cavern. And we knew that we wanted a shift in kind of tone there, because everything was scary up to that point, but we didn't want the Chozo to really be scary, but at the same time they needed to be terrifying. So it's a clash. So, but we wanted that sequence to open up with something that was really kind of more tender and romantic. So I came up with this piano cue and sent it to Sam, and Sam was like, "This is great. I love it. Let's kind of build it out." So I converted that and made it more string based, so it had more of a kind of flowing emotional feel to it. And that was one reel there. And there's the whole sequence where she actually talks to the Chozo, and that was a different reel block. So we knew that the challenges for both that sequence and the sequence afterwards had to have two different kind of musical tones to it. And the one where she's speaking to the Chozo also had to be different, just because there was dialogue in it. And we knew that we wanted the dialogue to be processed in a way to be, I don't know, extra cool, just so that it was clear that her talking to herself was the Chozo and not her. That was a real concern, that people were just going to be confused that why is she talking to herself?
Yeah, it was an early idea that sounded really great on paper, and when we were getting into it, and it was all written carefully so that her early audio log that she records, the idea is that it's intercepted and re-edited, because the Chozo can't communicate with her directly. So they have to re-edit what she said just to say back to her to give her information. And that was hard to do. We went through a lot of iterations of that and showed it to people, so that hopefully we had as much confidence as we could that people would understand what was happening.
It was as soon as it hit paper, we were like, "That's such a cool idea." And then like Sam said, the first test came out and we were like, "Uh-oh." This is going to confuse people.
Now, you guys had touched on it earlier, but when you were composing the score for Sky Calls, how much of it was informed by the sound design of the Metroid games, and which is heavily based on atmosphere rather than using a full orchestra?
So there were the key moments that we knew we were going to pull sound from the original game, so that people could hear that call out. I think I mentioned the rocket sound and some of the other interface UI stuff. We wanted that to be 100% oh, maybe you're playing the game, but not really kind of thing. And then we kind of went through, I think mostly Super Metroid, and listened to a lot of the original levels. And when you'd move into a new zone and kind of just because to me, that's what I loved so much about those early kind of the NES and Super Nintendo versions of the game, is that the environments, none of them really had music. They just had memorable sound design atmosphere. And we use that as kind of like a reference bed to be like, well, okay, when she's in space, it should have kind of this kind of like an atmosphere to it. And then when she gets down to the planet, we can maybe change it to like this kind of an atmosphere. And then on top of that, we started to try to build a score as well. So, you were kind of carried through the environments by the different bases of the sound design. And then you were kind of led through all the scenes from kind of like an orchestrated standpoint where the more traditional instruments kind of like help pull you through that.
Yeah. What I think something we talked about early on was how much we loved in the original games that the sound design and the music were kind of, in many cases, one and the same. It was there would be atmospheric tunes with a little bit of melody here and there, but it was hard to say whether that was sound design or score. So I love that kind of stuff when you can't really tell what the difference is, and that's something that I think Jeff did a really great job of incorporating.
Cool. So when it comes to video games, so as an example, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption sort of experimented with a partially orchestrated score, while in compared to other M, it was recorded entirely by orchestra. But in your experience with composing music, do you think Metroid is better served by a synthesized or ensemble score?
Oof. I mean, I think it's scene and content dependent, right? I mean, if you look like Shadow of the Colossus is like a piece of art that like really benefits from
incredible game, absolutely
right, game. And the score is just unbelievable. Like, and they do a really good job of knowing when it's going to be really a piece of music and when it's going to be more atmosphere. When you're exploring the world, it's very atmospheric, and then it's almost kind of like a music video when you hit one of the colossi. It just switches and it starts playing like music, and I think that really benefits it well. I think like another example more contemporarily is Risk of Rain 2, if anybody's familiar with that. The score there is absolutely unbelievable, and it's so weird and like disconnected and funky, but in its sense it creates a package that works completely, and some of its parts are better because of it. And I think that's kind of one of the follies that a lot of bigger franchises are falling into when their score gets made. And it's not so much that it is synthesized or that it's orchestrated, it's the fact that it's less inspired, where they're just trying to make what people think that a game like that should have or sound like, as opposed to trying to make the best possible music for what the style of that actual game is.
Yeah, not everything needs to sound like a big AAA blockbuster movie, and sometimes video games fall into that trap where it's like, it was the simplicity of the original games, so the earlier scores that we loved. So it's like you don't need to overscore it.
You can almost feel the like director, producer that's on it being like, well, it needs to be really big and cinematic. Like, this is a moment where like big cinematic stuff is happening, so make it sound big and cinematic. And I think that's a bad goal. Like, it should be like, well, what's going on in the scene? Like, what kind of sound can be applied to that to really help push that forward? So I don't think a lot of the modern Metroid games have good scores.
Bold claim, yeah.
I love the Prime 1 score. There's a lot. I still listen to a lot of those tracks. I don't have as clear of a memory of Prime 2 and 3, except for like doing like the motion controls in 3. But I agree. I think less is more when it comes to this franchise. And I didn't play the other M. I just kind of watched. I watched a lot of gameplay footage from it, and certainly saw a lot of people's responses to it. It was quite polarizing, but that one lent heavily on the cinematic quality.
I think it really depends on what the new Prime or the new Metroid game is going to be like from a style standpoint, right? Like, just completely. And if they lock it in, like Doom's a good example, right? Mick Gordon's score for that, like, was super iconic now. And there you're looking at a franchise where they were so afraid to kind of touch base on like metal and like kind of guitar driven stuff. And it's a project where they could have just been like, well, make it metal and make it sound like Doom. And then it would have been kind of like a AAA disaster version of what is actually done, which is where they tried to find, well, what about making it guitar? What about it is Doom? And how can you push that to like 11, which is what was done. And that score is obviously pretty iconic now. People refer to it as being one of the better conversions of like an old style Doom sound and making it into something new. So like if they did that with Metroid, and when the new Metroid game comes out in another 15 years or whatever, I really hope that they've taken the time to make it really iconic and figure out a way to make it really connect with whatever the game material is.
So death metal, got it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Just get that metal choir back from Doom Eternal, get them to record some Metroid stuff.
Yeah, right.
Mick Gordon's soundtrack for Doom is outstanding. But I think he's really good at finding, as you said, with what you guys did with Skycalls, he's really good at finding those bits that work, and then how do you bring them forward and stuff. But yeah, no, really good.
Tangent. I had done the Doctor Who theme really synced up well with one of the tracks from the first of his Doom games, and I had completely mashed them up and sent it to him and was like, "Hey, like, don't sue me, but look, it's like literally the same key." And it got a little traction on Reddit, and he responded, and he was just like, "That's hilarious. My wife said the same thing, and here you did it." And I was just like, "I heard it too."
Brilliant.
That's amazing.
Didn't I make a little logo for that, like a Dr. Doom logo for that?
Yeah. I was like, I need to figure out how to put the TARDIS in with this logo. Can you do it? And you sent over this like absolutely perfect icon for it.
Oh my god, yeah, Doom Guy's face on the board. Yes, do it. I'm gonna have to track that down after this. Okay, so let's move away from the music a little bit. Obviously, the character of Samus was made possible for the movie by America Young, providing motion capture and stunt work, and Jessica Chobot for the live action parts, bringing the iconic character to life. So, what was it like working with those guys and like sort of bringing your vision of Samus to life?
Well, I was lucky that that both Jessica and America were huge fans of Samus, and they each brought their own kind of interpretation of the character, which is something that I really liked about the character coming to life through two different performances, kind of emerging as one. And Jessica, I knew Jessica for a while. I knew she loved the Samus character in the Metroid games, and I knew this was something she would hopefully really jump at. And with America is amazing. She's an amazing multi-hyphenate. She's a director, writer, actor, stunt person. And she has done so much motion capture work that it was wonderful just being able to, she just kind of came by, suited up, and was ready to go. She didn't need any explanation on how the process worked. And she's done so many video games before. And in fact, I think the new, I forget what it's called, not Arkham Knights, whatever the new Batman game is where you can play as Batgirl. She did the mocap and the voice of Batgirl. So she's cool. A pro. And so it was just really fun working with them both to figure this out. Because, I mean, part of the challenge with the mocap is that even though America was wearing this very slim bodysuit for the motion capture, she still had to walk and still had to move like she was wearing the giant Various suit. And we helped her a little bit. We had this giant, hilarious-looking styrofoam tube that we put on her arm to represent the gun, so that she could kind of feel it. So when she puts her hand on it, it doesn't, like the mocap wouldn't go through the gun. And so using that, and then we actually did all the motion capture at a friend's gym that he owned in Burbank, because it was a lot of space. And there's a lot of padding everywhere. And we could take all these bits of workout equipment and create this whole jungle gym for her to play around and climb over rocks or do whatever she was supposed to do in the scene. And the
suit used accelerometers, and so we didn't have to worry about cameras like obscuring anything.
What was amazing was that we looked for a long time, for several months, for the best motion capture solution that we could afford. There's an innumerable amount of places in LA that you can do this, but it costs quite a lot to rent the stage, to rent to hire the crew, and then to do all of the data conversion after the fact. So we're looking around. Everything was way out of our budget because we're just funding this ourselves. And finally came upon this company. I believe they were called Mobile Mocap, and they came to us. They had an entirely contained system that was just one computer and the jumpsuit. There was no additional sensors or a cage that had to be built. And it gave us so much freedom to be able to kind of do whatever we want. At one point, to get Samus running, America just ran out the gym onto the sidewalk and ran down the sidewalk, and she just ran until she was out of range of the computer. And that's not something we would have been able to do necessarily if we were in a small volume. So the process was really good, and we were so nervous up to that point. We had no idea if any of this would actually work. And it wasn't until after the mocap day and all the data was translated so that we could then attach it to the mesh of the 3D model, and then open it up and actually watch the animation process. As Jeff mentioned earlier, we had never done mocap before. This is not something we had experience in, so we just had no idea if it was going to work. So once we opened these files and started seeing everything motion, I think we all just breathed an enormous sigh of relief. Like, I think we might have a film here.
Not to say that it wasn't without like some concern, because there was definitely the process of converting the data to get the best kind of convincing exact replication of what America had done, which some of the performances like were amazing. And then you'd look at the mocap and it was like just off, and you're like, damn. So like, we'd have to go and tweak some of them.
Yeah, or like there'd be like one keyframe where all of a sudden her arm is just going through her chest. Right. The leg is pointed straight up. And so, but that's normal. Okay. That's normal with motion capture
it's
work.
Like playing a Rockstar game.
Throwing some shade here today.
What? Never.
That's remarkable, though. Not Rockstar's buggy games. Your process,
or both, I guess, a little bit.
So, rounding it back, but it was because both Jessica and America made the process for us so easy that the whole post-production phase went so well. So it was great working with them.
To throw it back to Jessica, we were trying to find a really cool way to do the in-helmet stuff. Like, this was a big challenge because we were like, well, how do we make this kind of look cool but not rip off anything? And we had gotten a camera stabilization plugin that we were kind of using on a different project to do just compositing of background stuff. And Sam had flipped it around and was just like, well, I'm going to stabilize her eyes. And it made for what the effect, which is great, I think. It kind of locks her head in position so that there can be motion around it, but it still feels like it's kind of in a contained environment. Which they went on. Yeah. I think the first It or the new It movies used it in that like terrifying dancing scene at the end where he's like stabilized and everything around him is still moving, because we didn't want it to look like Iron Man, but at the same token it like was gonna have to look a little bit like Iron Man because you're inside of like a hologram helmet. So
yeah, and I mean that was originally kind of inspired by the first Prime game anyway.
True.
But yeah, I mean I think if I remember correctly, we actually have our other Rainfall partner Jesse to thank for that, because I think in one of our last reviews, I think it was one of the last times we were like a week away, I think, from releasing, and we hadn't done that stabilization, so her head was kind of floating in frame quite a lot. And Jesse, who was not in VFX, said, what, there's something off, there's something not right about this. And so I was like, oh god, I don't want to go back. There were so many of those shots, I did not want to have to go through all of them all, but it was absolutely worth the effort.
And those shots pushed the storyline the whole way. I mean, they were the only ways that we could really get any dialogue into it.
Yeah, and it helped add a little Easter egg too. In the Prime games, when you're in the first person mode, so if you do something like if an explosion goes off close to you or something bright happens, you see a quick reflection of Samus in the visor. And so we did that. And there's a few moments where we had if you're looking through the visor, you'll see Jessica's face reflected in it. So it's just a little way to throw in one of the Easter eggs.
Yeah, there's a handful of Easter eggs in there.
Yeah.
The character of Samus has predominantly been a mute character throughout the series. So was there ever a point that you decided to not give Samus a voice? I know you'd mentioned just a minute ago being able to include the dialogue. Was that something you wanted to do from the beginning? Or did you think about like originally just having her not speak, kind of like in the games?
It's possible we considered it near the beginning, but once we...
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think when we came up with that idea for like the audio log and then recutting it, we at that point is like, well, we have to have dialogue, and it's Samus is different to me, different than like a character like Link, where it kind of makes sense that like I have a really hard time imagining Link speaking in a game or a film adaptation. It just wouldn't seem right. It kind of almost makes sense that he would be, even though technically Link is speaking in the game because characters respond to him like he just said something. To me, Samus is different, where it would make total sense that she would be speaking. So at that point, it was just, okay, what do we do? What's the best way to represent her in that way? And at that point, I left it to Jessica. That was her job. And I think there was something especially to the vocalization, like when she's getting hit or she's falling or something, just hearing those little grunts or hearing those little human noises in there helps so much. Just remind you that there's a person in that suit, and that works really well. For me, that works well in a visual like film way, where the video games are operating on a different scale. I mean, I know they went with their own thing for Other M, but I don't know. I'm trying to remember in Super Metroid, when she got hurt, did they have a little noise for that? I think they did.
They have a little noise, yeah. It's more of a bloop noise, isn't it? Though it's not really but in Prime they did have the grunts and stuff. Yeah. I think that was done by who's it done by now?
I think it was it Jennifer Hale?
Jennifer Hale, yeah.
Oh, was it?
Oh, it was Grimsby, yeah.
She's had quite a career.
I think you look at the origins are like, they had no memory to put dialogue. I think that the decision to not have these characters like Link and Samus like speak was more of a limitation of the fact that you have this tiny 8-bit sprite or whatever and don't have any ability to put vocalization to it. That you're using real actors and characters now as the games get more and more, realistic in terms of the graphics. I think it's inevitable that they're going to break those rules a little bit now.
Yeah.
With probably having every intent to have those characters speak when they were originally created. It's just like, well, we can't do it now. And then, now it's a thing. They don't speak. So let's just roll with it.
Well, we know Nintendo have rolled back, and like when they re-released a bunch of SNES games for the GBA, like with Link to the Past and stuff, they added the like Ocarina of Time grunts to Link and stuff.
There you go. Yeah, they're
not against it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And it was interesting to see, like with Breath of the Wild, where they decided to populate Hyrule with speaking characters, like in way more than they ever had before. So that called into more contrast the fact that Link wasn't speaking, and I think your mileage may vary on that. I thought it worked well that Link came off as more of someone who just doesn't talk, just because he's surrounded by all these other interesting characters. So I don't know, a lot of ways to go with it.
I think it also separates the player as the character too, because it's just like, well, you're the weird one that doesn't talk, and of course you're the person who's actually playing him. So it's like, all right, cool. Like there's something different about me as that character that makes it the player, That
you just have like the microphone and the switch turn on, so you just like speak into it, and then your voice comes out of Link's mouth.
Yeah, we tried to make as many decisions that wouldn't piss off Nintendo, because we didn't want them to like suddenly send us a message that was like, you need to take this down. We really wanted to do as much justice to what we were making, because there are other projects that have been shut down by Nintendo, all over the internet, and
including other Metroid ones.
We know they saw it. We saw the traffic. So, wow.
We've been around the block enough with these like fan film projects that we try to follow certain rules, and number one rule is respect the property. And most of the other things that we've seen that got shut down either are ones that went so crazy with the adaptation that Nintendo's like, okay, we have to shut this down because we feel this is harming the IP. Or they're monetizing. There's some that's like, or like maybe like kickstarting or something like that. And like, no, you can't make money off of this kind of thing. It's like, you can try, but you have to just always have that respect in mind that you're playing in someone else's playground. and they have full right to kick you out. So be a good guest. that's my rule.
They can take their ball and go home.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty much. And Nintendo loves to be that bully on the playground sometimes. So.
Well, we might have gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but I'll go on to the next question. I think you've already kind of answered this anyway, because I'm sure you've put a lot of research into it. But how much research actually went into the series before making the Sky Course? Did you play through all of the games? Did you go as far as reading the manga? Did you look at what fans perceived Samus to be or the series to be? And I was just curious how much went into that.
Oh, like I said, I grew up with the games. There wasn't a lot of. I didn't necessarily have to go back to be reminded of a lot of things because I wanted to hang on to that feeling that I had as a kid playing them, and I didn't want to necessarily spoil that by imposing my adult self on that. But that said, I did go. It had been a long time since I played Super Metroid, and at that time. At that time, I had a Wii U, so I believe Super Metroid is available to download for that. So it was fun to play that again on a big TV with surround sound, and just kind of experience that all over again. And I think, if I remember correctly, we did a day where I think the three of us sat down and we played some of that, and we played some of the Prime games, and we just kind of talked about the aspects that we liked about it and what was working for us, and it's like, okay, we need this or that in the film. I had read the manga before. I think I went back to check it out again because it dealt so much with Samus and the Chozo. But it was mostly like we wanted to stick to canon as much as possible, but still, as I mentioned, because this is an unofficial film, this is our own thing. We wanted to do our own take on it, so didn't want to be too influenced by that, because we knew, it's people are going to. There's going to be people who are not going to like it no matter what, and that's totally cool. There's going to be people who think it doesn't stick close enough to the stories, and that's totally cool. But if you have an open mind and you just want to see one person's or a group of persons take adaptation on it, then hopefully it's something that can be enjoyed.
Sure.
So, obviously, you said before that you were working within the budget, especially with the mocap and stuff. But if you had a larger budget and even more time and greater resources, how much further do you think you would have pushed your vision? Do you think you would have chucked in a Ridley fight just for the sake of it?
Post-credit sequence.
Yeah.
And who would play Ridley as well? That's a good question.
And why is it Samuel L. Jackson?
Definitely Jeff's cat would play Ridley for sure.
Just the devil incarnate.
She is a mean little thing. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if all that much would have changed if we had a bigger budget.
I think money can ruin a project too, because we were really trying to make whatever we could out of what we had. You start to have too many options and you lose focus on. Yeah,
limitations are great. Limitations are awesome.
Having said that.
No, honestly, I can't really think. We got everything that we needed on we had one day of mocap and we got everything we needed. I think we even finished early. We have everything we needed with our actors, and we really just did one day of live action stuff. And everything else was just computer time. And
maybe an environmental artist, bringing on a little bit of extra help for bringing in the character animation and creating environments. Not that any of them were bad at all. Everything looked great, but it's just it would have helped split up the labor so that we weren't doing everything.
Exactly. Yeah. I did bring on 2 or 3 artists who helped with Samus's gunship. I think maybe the Chozo statue, and I forget what else. I think some of the environmental stuff, but the gunship was the main one, because that was something that I wanted to look really good, because we were going to be getting some really close shots on it, and we had some artists come in to work on that and did a wonderful job. I should also mention Azima Khan, who was actually the one who modeled.
Rock star.
Oh man, yeah. She modeled the Samus suit, and this is actually kind of what originally kicked off the whole process of being able to make the film. One of the huge question, once all the voting came in, the tallies came in, and we're like, okay, we're going to do a Metroid short. The huge question was, how do we do the suit? And our first thing was like, okay, can we do this practically? Can we build something? And spent a couple of months. I went around. I talked to a lot of fabricators. I went to the place that did the first Iron Man suit and like the Spider-Man suit, and talked to all these people. Like, what is it going to cost? What is it going to entail to build something functional? And either the costs were just astronomical, way more than we could spend on that. And we looked at all other options. Like, what if we just build a torso and like it'll work well for all the close-up shots, and then for wider shots, the legs are CG. And like, okay, if we're doing that, why not just figure out the whole mocap solution? And then the question, okay, how do we create the best model, the best character model? And we were trying all kinds of different things. I wasn't seeing anything that I was really liking. And then I was on the Metroid subreddit one day, and I saw this post by Azima Khan, who had posted pictures of this 3D model she'd made for Samus that was awesome because it was more anatomically proportioned. See, like a lot of the more like official artwork is a bit more cartoony, like a really, really tiny waist, like a real human could not fit in this thing. And so she made a model that she felt an actual woman could be in, and it was awesome. And so I sent her a message out of the blue, like, there's no way in hell. Like, what would you think about helping us out with this thing? And told her about the project. And like 2 weeks went by and didn't hear anything. Like, okay, well, that's it. And then finally one day she emails me back, and we went back and forth for a little while, and then she agreed to help us out with this. And so she did a little bit more work on the suit model, sent it over. We did some tests, and we're like, oh my God, this is looking great.
If I remember correctly, like she'd never worked in a capacity that was like in a like professional environment or doing like freelance work and this kind of. She was just a modeler that really had some skills and had put together this awesome model. But then I feel like, in follow-up, we used her in some other projects afterwards, but like
we did, yeah.
I think Metroid really helped launch her into doing freelance work as this and becoming like a straight up professional doing it.
Well, we actually did a little bit of work on the giant shark movie, The Meg, and she actually worked on the shark. She worked on the shark model.
I thought we weren't going to talk about that, Sam. We specifically talked about not talking about the Meg.
How can you not talk about this? But yeah, no, she helped us out on the shark model.
That's amazing.
One thing I noticed about the various suit, one of the first things I noticed when I was watching it is, okay, that looks like an actual human could wear this. It doesn't just look like a weird looking robot like that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I just thought that was a great job. It was a really good touch on it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, she did a wonderful job modeling it. And we were so excited to see that. Because I think we did the very first animatics we did. I had downloaded just a free model someone had made of Samus that I believe was based off of, I think it was based off of the other M model, and we did some real brief animations and some proof of concept stills. And looking at it, it's like, oh, what is wrong? What is off about this? What is wrong? And part of that, what were those dimensions? Because it would look so weird cutting to a human face in there, then cutting out to the wide and having this more exaggerated figure.
Kind of glad it happened anyways. I mean, when we did Wonder Woman too, it's like our specific goal was like, look, like we want to make a cool short where she's a badass. It's just like not about sexualizing her or trying to try to get hits by having crazy sexy costume. And that's why we got the best looking costume that we could and making a film that like respected that content. And we wanted to do the same thing with Metroid.
So that's tying it back around to the question. That we were lucky to have the resources we needed. I mean, part of it was that, we've worked a long time to build up our company to be able to do these things and not have it cost a ton of money. Like a lot of this was just us at our desks working, which doesn't cost anything except emotional stress,
our pride. Yeah.
And so yeah, I cannot think of a way that what I would have done with a larger budget.
Now, the movie has reached over 3 million views on YouTube, has over 66,000 likes at the time of recording. So with the movie being so well received, have you thought about making like a sequel?
I know we've been asked that a lot. It's not something that we have in the cards right now. I feel like we tested our luck with this. Thankfully, it was not taken down when it was released, and we were so grateful to see the response that it got. That that's just something that I don't know if we can repeat or that we would dare to repeat.
We always talk. We're like, oh, that was cool. I mean, we even left the ending for this one open, and the potential of like, well, if we do a sequel, we can carry it on. But then it seems like when we re-look at that, we're like, we should probably pick something else and do the best we can with that as well.
Yeah, we try to we try to go. We try to alternate between doing stuff that's more like fan based or based on something else and our own kind of original stories and stuff. So I think whatever we do next will probably be something more original. But you never know. I'm for the time being, I'm just happy and grateful that it turned out the way it did and it got the response that it did.
So, Sam, in an interview, this was a while ago now, with CG Society, you mentioned that you'd filmed in a desert, but it didn't really have the same feeling of a sort of threatening alien world. So it was created with CGI. How much of what we see is real, and how much was created with the aid of a computer?
Well, let's see. Jessica's face is real, and I think that's
good
about
to
it.
know. I was wondering.
That's it.
Yeah. No, literally, that's it. Everything else was done in the computer.
Everything. Wow.
Yeah.
Even the consoles and stuff. I mean, some of the consoles are very obviously stylized, and when we do like the close-up shots, and some of the graphics on it are deliberately stylized as well. But all the stuff in the background behind her, with her like suit hanging up, all that stuff's not. It's all CG as well. So.
Well, more Easter eggs in there. Like if you look at some of the close-ups of the consoles of her ship, they were modeled almost exactly after the interior of the shuttle in 2001. And even the like the bio readouts and some of the radars and all that stuff, all the interfaces are copied directly from that, just kind of Metroidized. And then a lot of those, we took all of those and ran them through. We hooked up a VCR to our capture card and ran all the monitor footage through those multiple times to just give them
that's all real VCR footage
to give them that wonderfully degraded quality.
Mm-hmm. Not to say we didn't try to do it with plugins. It's just like at the time, like none of the plugins looked real at all, and
it's just so much more fun to do it that way.
We had these VCRs, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. But I did a location scout out in the desert, and I took some footage out there, and we were going to have to add so much in post to it to make it look interesting and alien and all that it seemed unnecessary, especially if there's some camera moves and some things that we would not be able to get on location unless it was a virtual camera. So I think we just made the choice to do it all virtually. I love shooting on location. I love doing live stuff. And for this particular project, it didn't make sense to do that. Although it would have been really funny, because one of the locations I scouted was Vasquez Rocks.
Where
Captain Kirk fought the Gorn. That would have been an interesting Easter egg there.
Oh, that would have been really interesting. Yeah.
But some of the formations, we did throw that in. Some of the rock formations in the background of some shots are modeled very much after Vasquez Rocks. So that was our way of throwing that in there.
Yeah.
Amazing. So one thing, obviously, you have mentioned that there is filmed footage for this that didn't make it into the final movie. Were there any other deleted scenes or bloopers or music, behind the scenes footage that you'd consider ever making available for people to check out?
There's not a lot of deleted stuff, because the process on this was so different from anything we had done before. It was more like making an animated film, where I would spend a night making an animatic, like wireframe version of shots for a scene, cut them together. Then I'd send them to Jeff and Jesse. They would check them out. We would talk about them. Then I'd make some adjustments, and then I would only render out the shots that I knew that we would need. And we'd go back and forth and iterate, and we'd have really fun screening nights where the three of us would get together. Oh boy, I miss doing these things in person. Get together and watch the cut of the film. Yeah. And we talk about what we thought could improve. And then I'd go back, do new paths on the animatics, and we do it all again. So it was a really fun iterative process. So there's
like a handful of sorry, go ahead.
Well, actually, you actually bring up a good point. We did actually shoot some behind the scenes stuff, some making of stuff that we never released. I'm not sure if we will. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at it.
I don't remember anything in it being just like, oh my, that's such a either interesting behind the scenes look or funny enough that we were just like, this has to be included.
Yeah, because I mean, it's you have to remember this is a fan film. This is not some big production. So like, we don't want to be like, oh, look how cool we are. Here's how we did this.
Foam tube arm was pretty hilarious, though.
The what? Oh, the foam tube. Yeah,
the foam tube arm. Yeah,
we do. Yeah, we have the raw footage of America doing the thing, which out of context looks hilarious, especially doing it in a gym with all this foam padding everywhere. But yeah, otherwise, I don't think we had some funny renders of like especially when like computer physics go incredibly wrong, and all of a sudden rocks are flying in the wrong direction. But
I think when you first applied the like mocap data, it was like inverted too. So like Samus was like running around on her head with her legs like kicking in midair.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
Yep, that was a new experience. So yeah, unfortunately, there's probably not a lot of extra stuff we can release, but yeah,
no, that's cool.
Both Ronda Rousey and Brie Larson have said that they'd like to play Samus in a Metroid movie. Do you have a preferred actress to play Samus, like whether it's one of them, or who would you ultimately like to play Samus? I guess.
Oh boy, I don't know. That would never be my call, so I hesitate to make a choice. I honestly, I always love it when major films cast unknowns in lead roles.
Hi, I want to play Samus. Great.
You're hired.
Yay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's fun when an actor comes in who you have no prior experience with, and you don't already associate them with other roles, and they come in and just totally own the character. Like when Hugh Jackman came in to play Wolverine, that was so great. And you can get typecast, and that's what you're known as for the rest of your life.
I would not mind being known as Samus for the rest of my life. I could live with that.
So yeah, I don't know, Jeff. What do you think?
I mean, I think Charlize Theron could probably do it pretty good justice. Plus, after Mad Max, she has a good experience with a robotic arm. So
it's a good show.
Okay, so a few years before The Sky Calls, Rainfall Films made a Wonder Woman short film. Since then, 2 official Wonder Woman movies have been. I think the second one's coming out soon, isn't it? Or it's out now. I'm not sure. How hopeful? Yeah. How hopeful are you that a Metroid movie could one day be made?
It'll be made at some point. We're at the stage now where everything is going to get made. It's just a matter of time.
The Super Mario Brothers movie has left an unhealable wound in Nintendo that is going to take a long time before they commit to doing feature films, I think.
Well, it depends what Illumination's Mario Brothers.
Yeah, they're making a new one.
A
new movie's coming out.
And they did a great job with Detective Pikachu. I mean, that was fantastic.
And the Sonic movie is...
Oh, I love the Sonic movie.
Better than it was going to be, I think, before they made all of the changes.
Better than it had any right to be, yeah.
That's, yeah. So, yeah, I think like Sam said, that this is an inevitable thing. It's just, I don't think there's a timeline that's going to exist for it.
I love how protective Nintendo has been of its properties. I really am, because I'm hoping that means that once they do sell it to a studio who then hires a creative team to make it, that they only do that when they're confident that team's going to make a great Metroid film.
Right, but they got to be smart and try not to get involved. Like, find a team and have the trust to have them take care of it. Because, I think if the suits try to get involved and start puppeteering or making calls based on the creative direction, it's going to destroy it.
Yeah, like video game adaptations, like there's a reason why they're so hard to make. And like, well, we've seen so few good video game films. And I don't know, it's hard, especially when like they're just their own narrative experience. So trying to adapt that they're an interactive experience. So when you adapt it to a non-interactive experience of just sitting in your chair and watching it, it has to be good enough. It has to adhere to the original property, to respect it, and still make it more interesting than actually playing it. You have to be able to watch a movie of this thing and say, well, I'd rather be home and play the game than actually, be watching this thing. And that's hard to do.
And because of that, their relationship with it is personal. Like, nobody's experiencing, Mario Brothers or Metroid for the most part in like a group experience, right? Like you're sitting there playing the game by yourself. So like what you kind of get out of it is personal to you. So you have these already kind of like expectations of what you want out of that franchise. So you're inevitably going to make somebody unhappy just because of however your vision of whatever the project's going to be, or however they choose to make a project is going to piss off somebody. So it's a lot harder to do a video game adaptation of something than it is to do other types of material, I think.
Which I prefer them to try to adapt earlier games that don't have as much story, that games that aren't as huge and cinematic as the games nowadays. Like games nowadays, you've got God of War, you've got all these games that are pretty much interactive movies. The production value is so high,
right? Because they want that cinematic experience. Yeah.
So like to me, it's kind of pointless to do that. I'm curious to see how the Uncharted movie is going to do, because the Uncharted game was already just a big movie that you were playing. So
which was already kind of referencing
it was Indiana Jones,
like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
So it's like this is a circular thing.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with like Dead Space. They're trying to make a Dead Space movie for a long time, but the game itself was already so heavily inspired by previous movies, like horror and sci-fi movies, that like, how do you do that?
Right.
So I don't know. That's why I think games like Metroid are actually great for adaptation, because especially the earlier games were very light on story. So you can do something new that the people who love the games haven't seen before.
And if it's Zelda, you can just add another timeline split.
God, not another one.
Heyo.
We're going to get the Metroid timeline split next.
Oh no.
Where the brain lives and dies. Moving away from that. So you guys, obviously you mentioned there about adaptation, but like you've both worked on short films, television and video games as well, I believe. So
yeah.
What's your favorite media to work in? Like, and why, or like, why do you enjoy each specific sort of discipline?
It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. I don't know. I love variety, so I love it. My favorite kind of week is when there's just different mediums coming in that we can work on, so that every day is different. It's fun. I mean, we can go from doing something for a Marvel film to a really independent film to a video game. Jeff doing sound design or music for a video game, and it's just cool. I love that variety. And although I will say I do not miss working on music videos.
We're not moving on music videos anytime soon. I mean, from a music standpoint, I think, like Sam said, that each discipline it's so different for all of them. Like Sam and I did a 24-hour game jam, last month, the month before. I'm working in video games, which is totally different from working in other mediums. Like you're creating music that it needs to be able to blend into each other using FMOD or whatever. And there can't be any iconic themes for the most part if it's something that needs to loop repeatedly on a level, as opposed to, a piece of music that's playing during like a boss fight, which really should have iconic themes. I do a lot of trailer music, and that needs to be like, it's completely independent from picture, because the picture is going to be edited to it later. So you're kind of like creating the storyline for the trailer. And then, short films and some of the features that I've done, like you're doing it to the picture. So it's the complete opposite. Like you need to help try to give an evolving story and play music that is going to help perpetuate the picture that exists already. So the variation is, I think, it's great. Needed.
Yep.
You had mentioned earlier about taking an existing game and trying to make that into a movie, and how hard it is to do the game justice. That being said, we loved the Ocarina of Time Zelda April Fool's video that you created back in 2008. So if a game from the Zelda series were to get a movie adaptation, which one would you want it to be?
Oh, I think Sam and I are going to butt heads on this one.
Spirit Tracks, definitely.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Just a big train ride.
Wand of Gamelan.
I think Majora's Mask would be really good for it. I think that the
Ooh, that'd be cool.
fractured timeline stuff would, cinematically, is just like, that would be, I mean, you're doing Groundhog Day, but it's Zelda. So that sounds fun.
That's actually a really good choice, because there's so much interesting visuals to do with that, and so many great characters in that story. Yeah, I don't know. That's one of the things. Like if we were in charge, we'd pick something weird like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think like when we did the trailer, we ended up mashing together elements from Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, and Twilight Princess. So you might have to do something like that for a first Zelda film if you want to cover all of these bases, if you want to introduce the storylines and the characters and create something really cool. Because the Zelda games are also are the stories are really good, but they are very light. There's not that much actual story there, and so you could conceivably merge some of the games together to make something to make a feature film.
I think the CDI Legend of Zelda animated game would be the best one.
Wand of Gamelan.
That would be glorious.
Yeah, Wand of Gamelan, yeah.
You already got all the vocal lines recorded. Just use those.
Yeah.
It's a good job we're not a Zelda
Just
podcast,
reanimate
isn't
it.
it? Because our viewer count would go right down after that. So no CDI Zelda, please. No.
Well, actually, that's funny. Like, because I don't know, Jeff, if you remember, because way back in the ancient days of the internet in 2007, when we were filming our trailer, like that was back when YouTube poop was around.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
So just all the crazy mashup edits that they would do, and so after our trailer came out, YouTube Poop did a version of our trailer, and we saw that. Look, that's it. We can retire now. We're done. This
the
is
high point of our life. Yeah. It doesn't get any. It hasn't gotten any better.
No, it has not.
I just remember. I think I was at the library. I was doing something there, and I came across it, and I was like, "There's no way they're making a Zelda movie. What the hell?" And I looked at it, and I don't know. I fell for it at the time. Looking back, I'm like, "How did I fall for that?"
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time, it got me. So it was very well done for its time. So yeah, that was that was quite memorable. Yeah.
You broke my heart.
The biggest difference with that one was that, IGN funded that one, but I have to give them credit. Like, nobody said anything. They were like, please go do something cool. And we were like, okay, bye. And just came back and was like, here's your trailer. I mean, they even though it was funded, it was like the first, well, bam, we could probably make more of these and just do it ourselves.
It was the first thing we ever did. It was literally like the launch of Rainfall Films.
Launched our company.
Was on April 1st, 2008, along with the trailer. And lesson learned, do not launch your company on April Fools. No one will think you actually exist.
It's true. Lesson learned.
I think because it was released by IGN as well. I think that's what added a bit of weight to it. I was like, oh, it's got to be real. It's on IGN, It really, yeah.
And that was not the original plan. The original plan was to release it because we actually finished it about 5 or 6 months prior, and we were planning on actually doing.
Someone leaked something.
It was leaked. It was leaked to NeoGAF.
Yeah.
Not the whole thing, just certain shots. And then we were planning on doing like a whole series of these with IGN, but, and then it was their idea to release it as an April Fool's, which it sucked because it meant we had to wait several months for it to come out, and we were so happy and proud of it.
Yeah, we were so proud. We were just like wanted to show it to everybody, and it's like sitting on it for almost half a year.
But we realized that them releasing it this way was probably going to garner way more hits and probably piss a whole lot of people off. But that's part of the game. But that was a very weird project because we were trying to do the whole thing in secret, and Yeah, it was like looking back on it's like, yeah, you watch it now, like there's no way anybody would fall for that thing, which I think goes to show how sophisticated fan filmmaking has become over these last 12 years. It's incredible what people can do now.
I mean, I think if we had made a new trailer as well, that it would look just very different based on our experience now. I mean, even doing something like Metroid, I think would be a kind of a quantum jump in quality just based on our own experience between then and now.
Yeah, well, things change every time goes by. Technology becomes greater, and yeah, I'm sure you could make a fantastic whatever you touched. I'm sure you make an even better one. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing more of them in the future.
I'll tell Rona to go away.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually being on set again. That'll be fun.
The time frame of the project, from shortlisting Metroid to the release of the Sky Calls, what was that? Are we looking at was it a year, 2 years? I can't remember what the entire thing was now.
Man, after pre-production was done, it flew. I mean, we were done in no time. Seriously, the pre-production was the longest part.
It was, yeah.
Wow.
It was. I think I'm trying to remember. I think it shortlisted around the end of summer, beginning of fall of 2014, and then it released November 1st, 2015. So just a little bit over a year. And yeah, like a huge portion of that time was us just figuring out how the hell we were going to do it. And like I mentioned, trying to figure out if we can make the suit practically, if we're going to be shooting on location, how the mocap process was going to work. And it took close to a month for us to even get the mocap data afterwards because we recorded so much. It had to be cleaned up.
There must have been a release date we were trying to hit too, though, because I remember you were like feeding me rendered shots to score, that were like not wireframe, but like still rough because we were trying to get it done for some reason.
We wanted to get it done in that year, in 2015, and we wanted to get it done before the later in the year you get, later November and definitely December. That's not a good time to release things. Typically audiences aren't all that huge. It's the holidays. People are away. They're doing their stuff, and especially if you're interested in people in Los Angeles seeing it, if you want executives or agents to see it, then you got to do that before everyone goes off on vacation. So that was the main thing. We just wanted to make sure that we were maximizing the viewership.
Yeah, not like we were doing it for them, but we wanted to make sure that if people were going to see it, the most amount of people could see it if they wanted to.
Yeah, if you're putting all this work into it, you want people to see it.
I mean, isn't that the point of making a fan project, right?
Of course.
So that other fans can appreciate it.
So obviously, speaking of the legacy of it, we're 5 years out now from the original release of The Sky Calls. How do you guys feel about the movie, like reflecting on it, the response to it, and just what you've created?
I mean, it's great. I think it's probably the longest project we've ever made. It's like 11 minutes long, which was definitely a huge undertaking for us at the time. But I think that, not to speak for Sam, but I think that it's something that we are very proud of, but have learned so much that we would love to put those back into another project to see what the new bar could be set. I think it's a great culmination of the best we could do at that time and want to see what that is now.
Yeah. Thinking back on it, I love the experience so much, and I loved how it turned out. There's absolutely times where you make something and you spend a lot of time on it, and then afterwards you look back and you're like, I could have done better here, could have done better there. But I'm very proud of what we did, and I'm really proud of the response that we got, and so thankful for the fans' reactions. That it's just really nothing but good memories, and the fact that we were able to unofficially play in that universe was just kind of a childhood dream.
Yeah, not one person on the project was doing it just because, I don't know, because they were being paid to, or just because it was like a favor they were asked to. Like every single person wanted to make the coolest like Metroid short that we could do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Just you take that energy, you take that experience that you had of playing the games originally, and you try to put that on the screen, and you try to experience that yourself when you're making it. And if you can do that, if you can get even just a fraction of that excitement and that fear of being stuck on a weird planet, completely helpless, just your own skills at your fingertips, then hopefully you can do a good job. and I have fun rewatching it. I have fun seeing that all come together. It was the collaboration was probably one of my favorites that we've ever done.
Well, guys, it was really cool getting to hear just the backstory of making the movie and putting everything together. I mean, this is a fan project. So that being said, is there anything you'd like to say to the fans of the movie? Because there's a whole lot of them.
I just want to thank them. It's you never know what to expect when putting out something like this. I always say, I think we all say that we need to make something that we love. And if we make something that we love and we don't worry about everyone else, then you hope that there will be enough people out there that will enjoy it too. So we put it out there, and the response definitely was far beyond what we could have ever hoped for. And it was so much fun seeing that, and seeing we talked with a lot of journalists, we talked with a lot of people who wrote some articles on it, and it's not just the film, but of Metroid as a whole and Samus as a character. People want to see more of Samus and more of that whole universe, and so we had fun playing in there. And I can't wait to actually play a Metroid game again, where I can step in there, because I want Metroid on Switch. Damn it!
It's going to happen at some point.
Probably going to be Switch too.
Yeah. No, but thank you as well for making it possible. As soon as I saw that this was even an option, it was like, I've got to get this out there to our readers. We've got to get them to vote. We've got to, show that there's an appetite for this. We want to make sure it happens. And as soon as we saw that sort of vote gap narrowing, I was like, oh, this could actually happen. Let's do this. So I'm just really pleased that everybody got behind that and they wanted that to happen. So yeah, thank you for making it possible. And,
we really appreciate you guys coming on board and helping with the promotion of the voting process and all that. And yeah, it was definitely neck and neck for a while there, and and doing that, and then afterwards, once the film came out, thank you for all your support and getting the word out there. We just really appreciate you guys.
Our pleasure.
Although now we know if we do another one, we can't put Metroid in there as an option because you guys will just force the vote.
Well,
I see nothing wrong with that.
Guilty. So. Well, if you make a sequel, you've got Amanda as Samus. I can't play Samus, unfortunately, but I'll play a Federation trooper, and you can even kill me off in the first scene. It's fine. If we do
your suit will have to be red.
Yeah, more than likely.
You can be the other non-CG character in the film.
Yeah, sure. Like a stormtrooper type thing, just an extra in the background. It's just something,
All right, for this episode's group discussion, we have the question here is, what is everybody's favorite moment from Metroid The Sky Calls? I'll go ahead and start with mine. And I'm sure it's the same as everybody else's, but when Samus goes into the morph ball for the first time, it's just so cool just seeing it. But the touch that made it so great is it wasn't just Samus just going into a morph ball and going. It built up to it. So it's first she sees where she needs to go, and then just seeing initiate morph ball in the visor, and then she turns into it. It was just the series leading up to it just made that scene so cool, and I just got really excited when I saw it.
That's really cool. For me, it was just a little bit further along, and we touched on it earlier. The sort of it was Samus talking, and then the Chozo was using Samus's voice and speech to talk back to her, and I thought that was fantastic. I completely agree with you. It was a great moment. Really loved that. And then obviously the part that follows that, the big escape, where she's got to leave there, because you couldn't have a movie without an escape sequence. It's Metroid. So that was really cool. And she comes out there and she starts blasting everything, and yeah, really cool. So that moment for me really sticks out. I think that's my highlight from the movie.
I really liked with the escape sequence. I really liked the how long have I got?
Yeah, how much time do I have?
Just felt like this. Right, we're here again. Okay,
and it was a realistic amount of time as well. It wasn't like 3 minutes. It was like 40 minutes or whatever it was.
Well, there are just so many really good subtle touches to it that really made all the Metroid games come even more alive. So it's like, if you played Super Metroid and then you moved on to playing Prime, it was neat seeing like everything from Super Metroid to kind of grow up and evolve more in Prime, and then seeing that like in real life, so to speak, just and how it was just these subtle cues instead of like, here's this, here's this. I don't know. I just thought that was a nice touch there.
Yeah, and also the just the part where Samus is falling down through the shaft as well, and just the lighting in that scene. That was just a great scene, a great shot as well in the Morph Ball. I've still got the same enjoyment and love for it from when I first saw it. I was like, oh, this is incredible, this is amazing, this should be a full movie, they should be getting this commission, they should, Nintendo should be biting their hands off with this should be happening. And I watch it now and I still have that same sort of feeling and enjoyment from it, and it's like I want more, and I think I actually wrote the question about the sequel. I was like, I just want the sequel now. This is a great thing we should have.
I think for me, I don't really have a specific favorite moment. I think if you ask me to pin down a favorite moment, I was initially erring towards the Morph Ball, same as Amanda. Although for slightly different reasons, because one, I do love the build up. I like that proper seeing that, and as a fan, where you're gonna have to do a Morph Ball down that. So like you kind of play with fans. You kind of tease fans with that, and it's like you know what she's gonna have to do. And I kind of like the way that you didn't. And you obviously you mentioned this earlier when you were talking about sound effects. You didn't. Obviously, with the suit, you took a more realistic approach with the suit, but I kind of respect the fact that the Morph Ball was kind of almost Prime style proportions. Like you didn't feel a need to make the Morph Ball more realistic just because of what you were doing. I think the Morph Ball still felt very video gamey, silly, like she can squish down into this thing, and you didn't feel a need to explain it. You were just like, let's just roll with it.
Oh, I see what you did there.
She rolls into one of those big transparent like balls that you like run around with on the water.
Literally
It's a big hamster ball.
Bumping into each other.
But no, I just and I enjoyed the fact that the Morph Ball was very true to the games. Not that I was shouting at my screen wanting the suit to be more realistic to it. I just enjoyed the fact that you lent in, like you knew where to lean into the games and where to kind of take your own slant, and I really enjoyed that.
What I loved, and this was America doing the mocap. One of her choices was that she like backed up. She did like a lead up to it. We're like, I need some more space to do this little transition here, and something about that made it so much more tangible. That I love that choice. So we wanted to really highlight that in the short.
And did like a full dive into a ball.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she did that.
A full roll, which made it pretty easy to transition into the actual Morph Ball.
Yeah, she did a wonderful somersault, like a dive into a somersault, and so it was actually very easy to do that animation.
Oh, that's cool. Because I do like, I guess in a sense I might be backtracking a bit, but I like the fact that whilst you lent into the Morph Ball being what it is, there was that slightly more realistic element of she didn't just press a button in her suit and then start rotating forward like a hamster. So having the run up like gave that a real nice momentum. So yeah, no, that was good.
That scene had a number of iterations too. Like I remember we had it set up that it was like a wide angle shot at one point, and you could like kind of see the ball going through like the maze, like Prime style from afar. And then we had, well, what if we put the camera like in the tube, and then how it kind of like flew by the camera had a number of iterations, and how the trail looked on it.
It was your input on some of those shots that really improved it, because she wasn't that one shot, or I guess it's kind of two shots cut together inside the tube, seeing the ball fly past. I think you mentioned that it didn't feel fast enough, that it needed to feel like
I wanted it to be real hectic. Yeah
So like widening the lens, increasing the speed, so like she just flies by in a few frames, and you just see that trail that Tron trail go down past. Really helped. And yeah, the wide shot of her going through like seeing like the network, that there's like this vast underground network was, obviously heavily inspired by the games.
I think I had a lot of Tron Trail input, because when her ship took off from the planet too, I was like, it should have trails too. You were like,
well, it's funny because like when I was watching it, I was like, oh, that reminds me of Tron.
Good, that was appropriate decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, and I'm really glad that you guys just were talking about this straight, like off the bat on the podcast, because I think ultimately my favorite, I guess it's not a moment, but my favorite thing about the film is just that retro sci-fi vibe. Like, I love grubby sci-fi. So like when it starts and all the monitors look like 2001, and it's kind of like the weird all of the text at the top of her visor and stuff, and it all just feels very lived in and very grubby, and it's sci-fi, but you can kind of smell the oil, and that's kind of what I really liked about it, because that's always how I've imagined Metroid. I even think Prime kind of had that same vibe going on when you're poking around the Chozo ruins and stuff, and that's always how I've felt I've preferred Metroid. And whereas Fusion and stuff was not Fusion, sorry, Other M was that sleek sci-fi. I enjoyed that you guys went for that grimy sci-fi.
That is our favorite as well.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really fun getting to talk about all this. If anybody wants to find more of your work, where can they find you?
Well, it's really, we're on YouTube, Rainfall Films. You can also go to our website, rainfall.film. And we do have a Twitter, but we honestly don't post there very much. Best thing to do is go to our site, because we usually update it with our most recent projects.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Shinesparkers podcast. If you have any questions you'd like for us to answer, make sure to tag us on Twitter or on Facebook, and we'd be happy to answer them. Give us something fun to discuss, and we'll see you next mission.
See you next mission.
See you next mission.
See you next mission.
You know, one of the first things I noticed in the video, in the Sky Calls video, was like you were saying how sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied again. Sorry. You know, I hit my head a month ago.
I'm glad you brought it up, actually. I didn't know.
Yeah, I had to bring it up. Not only that, I got hit by a truck 2 weeks ago, so, you know.
She actually did get, she was in a vehicle. Is it not just like the truck didn't just hit her? It was like the whole car.
My car was totaled from a big, giant semi.
Oh, my God.
You need a Varia suit.
Exactly, right? I totally need a Varia suit. Now, you've mentioned like including the dialogue by having like the helmet and everything. The character of Samus is usually mute throughout the series. So what made you decide, let me restart that. Sorry. All right, for this episode's group discussion, we have the question here is, what is everybody's favorite moment from Metroid The Sky Calls?
Okay.
I'll go ahead and go with mine.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go ahead and start with mine.
Go for it, yeah.
So, because I said it, so.
Although I will say I do not miss working on music videos.
No, music videos can absolutely go stick it up there.
This podcast was edited by Darren Kerwin, with music from Maserati. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can find more at shinesparkers.net, along with the latest Metroid news, community features, and exclusive content. Alternatively, you can also find us on social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next mission.